Hello and welcome everyone to our Pollinator Pursuit web training. I'm Sarah Woodbury, Communications Coordinator for Wild Utah Project. We are just so happy to have you here. It's fun to see names we know and some new names as well. We're really grateful for you for joining us. We know that it's been a crazy time. We're all feeling it and really hard. So we're just really grateful for you, deeply grateful for you for taking the time to come and join us. This project would not be possible without you. You are the meat of this. You are the center, and we're just really grateful to get to work with you. So I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items, and then we'll all introduce ourselves. You'll get to meet the speakers, and we'll get started. So first off, please note that each of you is muted and your camera is off. So if you have any questions, you'll want to type them into the Q&A box. So if you move your cursor to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A button. And if you press that, it'll bring up a box that you can ask questions in. And if you want to check whether your question has already been answered, that would be wonderful. And if not, feel free to ask questions there. And our speakers will either answer them live or answer them in that box. And then also, we will be sending everyone a follow-up email after the call with materials that will be helpful as you continue. So be expecting that in the next few weeks. And if captions would be helpful for your experience, just let us know following this training, and we will send a recording of the webinar afterward with a transcript. And then also, with social distancing recommendations, we just want to note that what we're talking about includes a lot of going outside and surveying for different pollinators. And we recommend that you follow all COVID-19 recommendations and stay-at-home orders and everything. And we say this because usually we recommend folks go out with one other person. So as you're doing this work, we just ask that you take someone from your household, or if you're going alone, you let someone know where you are. We just want to make sure everyone's safe. But yeah, so this is a wonderful project. We're so happy to have you here. It's a really great thing to do during social distancing. Obviously, it's a worthy mission and great motivation to get outside and to be a part of conservation. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Mindy Wheeler to introduce herself.
Hello all out there in Cyberland. My name is Mindy Wheeler. I am the Rare Plant Conservation Coordinator for the state of Utah. This is my second year in working with monarchs and citizen scientists, and it's just been a lot of fun, really rewarding, and monarch butterflies are just definitely a great way to get into the insect world, and it's a great place to be. So welcome, and thank you all for joining us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mindy. And Mary, if you'd like to introduce yourself next, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you again for participating. And just a reminder, if folks jumped on late, this recording will be available after the web training. So if folks have to jump on and off, don't stress it. That information will be available after the fact. So Mary Pendergast at Wild Utah Project. I'm a community ecologist, and I've been a partner in this project for 2 years now, starting out with Mindy Wheeler a couple years ago. And yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Mindy. She's really spearheaded this work and been engaged from the beginning, taking on monarch conservation from the beginning, with building the partnerships and the vision and figuring out funding, all the way down to the details of making sure that the survey application is functioning properly. So I just really have to give a shout out to our partner, Mindy. Thank you. And I'll be talking to you all later.
Thank you so much, Mary. And now Amanda will be presenting. If you would like to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Amanda. Barth, and I am the Rare Insect Conservation Coordinator for the state of Utah. This will be my first year with this project, and I'm excited to expand it based on the foundation that was laid using or collecting monarch data around the state, monarch and milkweed habitat data, and now we're expanding it into more of a pollinator focus so that we can really capture a better understanding of pollinators in Utah. So thank you so much for your interest in being part of this community science project we call Utah Pollinator Pursuit. So with that, I'm going to start us off, and I'm going to turn my video off first. And I think the rest of us will also, if I can figure out how to do it. So I want to go over the overview so that you have an idea of what to expect for this presentation. We're going to discuss the background of the development of this project and explain the importance for data collection in the face of pollinator decline in Utah and across the West, but this is for our state. I'm also going to get into some detail with some tips for identifying monarchs and bumblebees, and as well as recognizing milkweed species around the state. And then we'll have a brief Q&A session while we switch speakers, and Mary Pendergast will walk you through the process of selecting a data steward site and navigating our website, and as well as the steps to using Survey 123, which is our data collection tool. We'll follow that. We'll wrap up our webinar today with a question and answer section. So please make sure that you are asking those questions in the Q&A box. We are excited to be able to answer any questions you have. So Utah's diverse landscape boasts an exceptional diversity of thousands of pollinating insect species. In fact, bees are especially efficient and industrious pollinators, and Utah happens to be home to more described species of bees than anywhere else in North America, with at least 900 known species of native bees. Utah also has over 100 species of native butterflies, hundreds of moths, and many species of flies, beetles, and wasps that are valuable pollinators for our natural ecosystem and agricultural lands. Utah's agricultural industry relies heavily on pollination. Fruit trees, melons, berries, beans, and peppers are just some of the important crops impacted by pollination services, much of which are performed by native bees. Healthy, functioning ecosystems offer diverse habitat that supports many types of pollinators. So if you see many types of bees, butterflies, and other insects, you can get a sense of environmental health. Unfortunately, many important insect pollinators are seeing significant and worrying declines. Some of the biggest threats they face are from land use practices that involve heavy pesticide use, intensive farming, and urban development that eliminates vital habitat for foraging, breeding, and overwintering. Warming temperatures, shifting weather patterns, droughts, storms, and heavy fire seasons are just some of the consequences of climate change that also threaten pollinator diversity and abundance. When we see a sharp loss in pollinators, this is a big red flag that our environmental health is also in serious jeopardy. There was a time when spring and summer blooms across the West were eagerly visited by the ubiquitous monarch butterfly and the western bumblebee. Their numbers were so abundant that their disappearance was unimaginable. Their arrival signified the change of the seasons, and traditions formed around their movements. The western population of monarchs have historically arrived in Utah as early as April, migrating eastward from their overwintering grounds along the Pacific coast. Since overwintering counts began in the 1980s, monarch populations have fallen from the millions to fewer than 30,000, a loss of more than 99%. With so few butterflies making it back to breeding grounds across the arid West, It's difficult to predict where vital habitats such as riparian corridors are being used for migration routes, or where the most suitable breeding habitat with ample milkweed and nectar resources will see any monarch activity. Milkweed, which are the only plants that monarchs can use for larval hosts, is often in limited supply, or it's been exposed to pesticides that make it toxic to monarch caterpillars. The western bumblebee was once the most commonly seen bumblebee throughout its historical range, from just west of the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific coast and north into Western Canada. Their sudden decline since the 1990s, attributed to the threat of pesticide use, habitat loss, and exotic parasites and pathogens, alerted the need for careful population monitoring. Annual surveys for bumblebees across this range have found very few western bumblebees, suggesting that its range has decreased by more than 28%, and that they may have been extirpated from some regions. Current estimates project that this species has declined by 41%. While many conservation actions are needed to help protect these vital animals, such as modified pest management plans, reduced pollination, and mitigation of invasive species, it is imperative that we understand how monarch butterflies rely on suitable breeding habitat and migratory corridors, and how bumblebees are distributed through a landscape of disappearing habitat. Data for monarch butterflies and bumblebees are extremely limited for Utah. Specifically, we don't have much information on how monarchs use milkweed patches throughout the course of the breeding season. We also don't know much about the late summer, early fall supergeneration and the path those butterflies take back to their overwintering grounds. We have very few examples of bumblebee sightings for a number of the rare species over many years, and we need a better resolution on our understanding of where essential nectar resources might be supporting our diverse pollinator communities. Based on data collected across Utah by citizen scientists in 2019, multiple milkweed species are distributed across the state in wet meadow and desert habitats. There are regions of the state, however, with little to no monarch presence data. In much of southern Utah, for instance, it's likely that these milkweed provide late summer breeding habitat for the supergeneration of monarchs that will ultimately migrate back to the coastal overwintering grounds, but we have no sightings of monarch activity during those warmer months. There are very few recorded sightings of rare bumblebees species since 2007. Since bumblebees are generally found in meadow habitat and at higher altitudes, much of the mountainous landscape across Utah is likely to support bumblebee populations where sightings would be especially likely during wildflower blooms. This gets at the heart of the information we're really trying to gather this year through community science data collection. We ask where suitable monarch breeding habitat occurs, which milkweed species are present, and what is the approximate density of these milkweed stands. In these habitat patches, is there evidence of monarch activity such as eggs or caterpillar damage on milkweed leaves throughout the breeding season? Near these habitat patches, are there also flowering plants that serve as available nectar resources for adult monarchs? Which species of flowers are present? We encourage all monarch sightings across the state of Utah with photo submissions for species verification. We also invite all submissions of bumblebee sightings with photographs of both the bees and the flowers they are visiting. When checking milkweed plants for signs of monarch activity, it's helpful to look for specific signs that relate to the various life stages. Monarch eggs are recognizable as cream-colored, ribbed football shapes the size of a pinhead, usually present as a single egg and generally on the underside of a younger milkweed leaf that's near the top of the plant. Occasionally, a female will lay more than one egg to a leaf or a plant when the milkweed are scarce. Monarch caterpillars or larvae have a distinct black, white, and yellow bands. They have two pairs of black filaments, one pair on the head and one pair on the rear. After each molt, the caterpillar is in a later instar or developmental stage. They consume a lot of plant material as they grow, and signs of caterpillar feeding on milkweed is evident at all instars. Caterpillars in the 5th and largest instar are preparing to pupate, and they might do so on a branch of a milkweed, or more likely they'll journey to taller nearby plants or structures within about 30 feet. Monarchs pupate in a mint green chrysalis with a thin band of gilded bumps. Beautiful. These are often difficult to find because they're meant to be camouflaged from predators. Just before the adult monarch emerges from its chrysalis, the pigmentation on the wing scales develops and the black, orange, and white wing patterns become visible. After emerging, adult monarchs primarily focus on mating and laying eggs. Females lay eggs immediately after mating, and adults typically mate several times. During summer breeding, adults can live 2 to 5 weeks, but those adults that emerge late summer and early fall suspend mating and instead migrate back to their overwintering grounds. This supergeneration can live up to 8 or 9 months, and they'll mate in early spring to begin the cycle of breeding and migration again. So this is just to give you some ideas of how to spot milkweed eggs, or monarch eggs, when you're looking at milkweed. They're pretty small, and you'll find them usually on the newest growth of a plant, and sometimes at the tiniest plants on the edges of a milkweed patch. It's usually somewhere that's shaded, like the bottom side of a leaf, or in plants that are shaded a little bit by trees or some other plants. If there's not a lot of milkweed in an area, there might be more eggs on older plants, but still check the top leaves of the plants first. When you're looking for caterpillars, one of the best signs is damaged leaves that are eaten. At all instars, you should be able to see this kind of damage. Younger caterpillar instars eat shallow holes in the leaves and kind of create a lacy pattern that you can see. If you don't see caterpillars in the area, it's a good idea to check for frass or caterpillar poop that might be below some of that damage, and gives you an idea that there might be caterpillars munching nearby. If you're looking over chrysalises, again, this is going to be tricky because they are meant to be camouflaged. They might be found on milkweed branches, but look around because they're hidden. Generally within 30 feet, you might be able to find them. It could be tricky. When you're looking for adults, adult male and female monarchs can be distinguished easily. Males have a black scent spot or gland on the hind wing that's not present on the female. Females have thicker black veins, and adult monarchs have a pattern of white spots on these submarginal regions, right in here, black on, or white on black, submarginal regions of the wings. When distinguishing caterpillars or chrysalises, remember that monarch caterpillars have 2 pairs of black tentacles, but queens have a 3rd pair. And queen chrysalises look really similar, but they tend to be much smaller and are usually about 1 inch long. Monarchs are able to sequester the toxins from milkweed in the scales of their wings, which makes them taste terrible to predators and can disrupt cardiac function. Therefore, a number of other butterfly species have adapted colors and patterns that mimic those of monarchs so that predators avoid them too. Closely related species like queen and soldier butterflies also feed on milkweed and look similar, but can be distinguished by their darker orange or chestnut color and the pattern of white spots on orange rather than on black. Viceroy butterflies have a very recognizable band across the hind wing, and that's visible when their wings are both open and closed. Queen and viceroy butterflies are less commonly seen in Utah than monarchs, but they can still fool humans as well as predators. When looking for characteristics that help you recognize bumblebees, the first thing to notice is their rounded bodies that are thick, that are covered in thick fur. They have large black eyes, a heart-shaped face, and dark antennae that have sort of an elbow-like bend. Bumblebees tend to fly slowly. They're they're getting a good look and smell of flowers. So if they're buzzing around any flowers, they're usually doing so slowly. So they will often buzz against flowers, and that is buzz pollination, and it helps release the flower's pollen. This is a distinctly bumblebee quality. If multiple flowers are on a single stalk, they will often climb from one flower to the next rather than flying between them. And also bumblebees they can sting, but they're extremely docile. And if they're threatened, they would first raise a middle leg, which is precious, and they are extremely reluctant to sting unless they've been trapped or they're defending their nest. If they're nearby their nest, that might change their behavior a little. Different species can be identified by the pattern of colored bands or body segments. These segments can be black, brown, buff, yellow, red, orange, or white. They have dark wings, while honeybees have translucent wings. And like honeybees, bumblebees collect pollen on their rear leg baskets after they comb it off of their furry bodies. Unlike honeybees, bumblebees are able to fly in low light conditions like dawn, dusk, and during cloudy days. And they're active in cooler temperatures of early spring and late summer, and also at higher altitude habitats like subalpine mountain meadows. One of the key reasons we ask you to take photos of bumblebees that you see is that many other species look like bumblebees. The most helpful photographs of bumblebee sightings would include the face, a view of the bee's back, and a photo of its abdomen. This helps us distinguish between flies, carpenter bees, and honeybees that are commonly mistaken for bumblebees. Some things to look for on your own is that heart-shaped face with the crooked antennae, 2 pairs of dark wings, a round and this really cute little round fuzzy body. Size is not always a reliable indicator because the workers, drones, and queens of the same species can be very different from each other. And they can also vary in size throughout the growing season, throughout the colony's lifespan. To give you a better sense of what you're looking for when you're searching habitat for milkweed species, we want to describe a few features that all milkweed species share that should help you recognize them. Milkweed leaves and stems produce a thick milky sap when broken, which is where these plants get their name. These leaves are typically oval-shaped, and they grow opposite each other on the same stem. And that stem is usually at least a little hairy. Milkweed flowers grow in ball or umbrella-shaped clusters from the same stem, and they have a very distinct reflexed petal structure and a crown where the nectar is stored. Looks very distinctly like a crown. The horn-shaped pods gradually dry and split, and they release wind-dispersed seeds, and those have a lot of feathery white fluff to help them catch air. I'm going to talk about the milkweed species native to Utah that you might encounter, but I want to point out that you're most likely to encounter 3 of the most abundant species: showy, swamp, and antelope horn milkweed. We have a handful of very helpful maps and distribution information that was put together by the Rare Plant Program. So showy milkweed is really common across Utah, and it's found in meadows, open woodlands, near farms. It's the largest milkweed species in North America, and you'd find it blooming from May to September. It's got a beautiful pink flower. The swamp milkweed is very common in more riparian areas, so wetter lands, along lake shores, and you could find these more in northern Utah. They're blooming from July through September. Also pretty pink flowers, but longer, narrow leaves. Antelope horn milkweed is really common in warmer desert shrub land and pinyon juniper areas, more high altitude areas, and it is distributed across the state. It's not going to be very common in Great Basin or the Uinta Basin areas, and you'll find this blooming from May through July. This one's my favorite. Then you'll also see things like world milkweed in southern Utah if you're looking in those habitats. These are found in more open areas in grasslands. They have a pretty distinct appearance and really pretty white flowers and long, narrow pods. this will be blooming from June to September. The pallid milkweed is a little guy. You'll find those on clay soils, in PJ, in blackbrush, saltbrush areas. Again, it's very common, but maybe not blooming or visited in later summer months by volunteers. We don't have a lot of evidence of monarchs using these pallid milkweed, but we could see them blooming from May through July. Broadleaf milkweed is found in more disturbed areas of desert shrub in southeastern Utah. You can see these blooming from June through September. And butterfly milkweed is generally found in southern Utah. It has a really long blooming time. It thrives in warmer climate, and so it's going to be more abundant in these warm areas. Eastwoods milkweed is found in sand, desert areas. It's blooming from April through July in southeastern Utah. Utah milkweed is found in pretty dry, sandy soils. You find them in canyons, find them in washes, and they will be blooming from late May through August. Rusby's milkweed is found in sagebrush, PJ, ponderosa pine and mountain brush communities. Look for them in rocky areas. They bloom June and July. Dwarf milkweed are also a small species. They're found in dry flats in the southeast and also in Arizona and New Mexico. They will be blooming from April through July. And then if you are looking very closely, you might find some of our Easter egg species, some of Utah's rare Asclepias. Cutler's milkweed, it's found in sand dunes, which are very restricted habitats. They bloom from April through June. The desert milkweed, you might find those in washes and roadsides, in the Sonoran and Mojave scrub. They bloom from May through September. Hall's milkweed can be found in rocky slopes and roadsides. You find it in pinyon and ponderosa and mixed conifer forest areas in higher elevations. It's pretty scattered across the state. This will bloom from June through August. Ruth's milkweed will be found in sandy washes or clay soils at the base of, in alluvial fans at the base of some cliffs, the sandstone cliffs. And generally you'd look for those in the San Rafael swell. And Welsh's milkweed we find in sand dunes like the coral pink sand dunes habitat in southern Utah. This is in higher elevations too, or sort of high mid-desert. This will bloom from May through July. So I want to point out that there are some commonly mistaken look-alike plants that may also produce milky sap and be found in habitats where you would expect milkweed, but they're not. Dogmane species, for instance, may look similar, but they have brown stems and they have small pink or whitish green flowers that are very different. They have the flowers are unique in their own way. They don't look like milkweed flowers at all. Spurge varieties such as euphorbia have small white or greenish flowers and yellow bracts. Wild lettuce can grow very tall. It has a long central stem, but its flowers are yellow like dandelions, and their leaves are lobed and prickly. Twine vine might be the trickiest look-alike, but it is very much a vining plant, and you would find it climbing on other plants. So don't make the mistake. I mean, even if you included these and we got some photos, we would understand, but this is a helpful comparison to try not to mistake these. But I will point out that they have commonly been referred to as milkweed, but they're not related. They're not Asclepias species. So with that, I will pass this over to Mindy, and she'll let us know what sort of questions you might have asked in the Q&A box. Mindy?
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, there's a few questions have been asked. One question that sort of came and went, and I didn't capture who it was, but they asked whether the presentation would be available on the website after this was done. And the answer to that is yes, absolutely, as well as a whole bunch of other information that's going to be available on our website. There was a question about how much plant material a caterpillar can eat. And I don't know specifics to that question. I would think it would be a bit more than a gallon plant, and I don't think I can answer a certain number of leaves per pupae. Amanda, is that possible for you to answer?
I would say that a single caterpillar could put away quite a few leaves on the same plant, but they only get so big. So it's, I think it also depends on the species of milkweed that they are eating. So it's hard to say. That's not really a super easy question to answer.
Thank you. That's kind of what I found too.
Yeah.
And then there was some other questions. Oh, another question. When looking for eggs and chrysalises, is it possible that you might damage them? And I began by saying these are more durable than you think, but yes, be careful. Do you want to add anything to that, Amanda?
I would say always, if you're looking for anything, use caution. You're going for something that's small and delicate. So, but they are fairly resilient to wind and other things. They shouldn't just flick off the leaves if you're moving around. They have a pretty good anchor there. But with chrysalises, if you are lucky to see one, then definitely don't touch it. Just don't touch any of them at any point. And unless you happen to be tasked with catching adults and tagging them, and you are prepared to do so with a protocol in place, don't touch the insects. That is the best rule I can come up with.
Okay, yeah, I think those are the questions
Great.
At this time.
Okay, so I'm going to turn off my screen and we're going to switch it over to Mary's now.
Ooh.
What happened?
I'm sorry, just I think it sounds like there's some questions in the chat as well, but maybe we can answer those at the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Amanda and Mindy, for fielding those questions. And for anybody that has a question that didn't get addressed, we should have plenty of time during our question and answer session to get to those. So thank you guys for engaging. Keep asking questions. I think it's easier to manage those in the Q&A box. So that would be great if you provide those there. So just to kind of navigate with our overview, we are at the community science data collection portion of the presentation, and I will be focusing on how to contribute community science data using the Survey 123 application, as well as how to navigate the website and how to select a data stewardship site. If you're interested in doing that, to collect habitat use information during the growing season. So first off, we have a couple of different options that you can choose from to contribute data to the project. You can take stewardship over a site or location. And by that, we mean you can visit a site multiple times throughout the field season in order to increase your likelihood of logging data regarding the presence of bumblebee or the presence of different life stages of monarch, as well as you'll be increasing your likelihood of observing different flowering plants when they're in bloom and visible at different times in the field season. And a second option, an alternative, or you could do this in addition to having stewardship oversight, you can just record opportunistically, meaning if you encounter a monarch or a bumblebee while you're out and about in your neighborhood, or if you're out for a hike in the mountains, or even if you're just driving past what looks like a nice milkweed patch, you could just take a couple minutes to open the Survey 123 application on your phone and record some information about your observation. And I just want to take a minute to clarify, if you think you might be interested in considering the site stewardship approach, you will be able to select a site based on a list of locations that our rare plant and rare insect coordinators, Mindy and Amanda, have developed for Utah. And we'll be discussing that in just a moment. Or you can choose a novel location that you might encounter regularly and you think might look like good milkweed habitat for monarch, or maybe it's a location with lots of native flowering plants and it's a little higher elevation, might be suitable for bumblebee. So if there's a place near you that you think is worth visiting multiple times during the growing season, or even once a month between late April and September, you can name that, or we'll deem that as a stewardship site, right? So we'll just add that to the list. But in terms of the timing and increasing your likelihood of seeing different life stages and different flowering plants, I just want to give some recognition to the fact that we have people from all over the state participating in this. So for example, if you're in southern Utah, you may see milkweed flowering and adult monarchs in April, but in northern portions of the state, you may not see many adults until June. So every field season's insect and flowering plant emergence timing is going to be different depending on how many successive warm days we have and how early that occurs in the season. So that's why it's really valuable as a site steward to be visiting your site multiple times and increase our chances of understanding where these different species are finding suitable habitat and what's making it suitable. So just wanted to mention that option. So now for some more detail on how to become a site steward. So I'm just going to back up here. You can see the image of the home page of the Monarch Conservation in Utah page. So from there, on the top of the page, you can see circled the Get Involved tab. You can go ahead and select that. And that will take you to the two options I just described, becoming a site steward or just recording pollinator sightings. So if you go ahead and click Learn More below Become a Site Steward, and this will take you to the how-to page for stewardship over a pollinator site. You can see it walks you through 6 different steps. So just to break this down, you would review the protocols that are made available on the site, and also that we're sharing with you today, and we'll be following up with recordings after this web training as well. And also just double check that you're on the sign up. In other words, you've signed up to get emails regarding updates on the project. And secondly, second step here, attending the web training, which you're participating in right now, or viewing this training presentation after the fact would be great. So you can always invite any friends or people, family that you think might be interested in this project to participate, because they can watch this web training after the fact. And everybody can practice their social distancing while still being outside and contributing data for conservation and pollinators. Thirdly, there are detailed instructions for downloading the Survey 123 application. And so those are available here. We have some great short 10-minute or less training videos that Mindy has recorded that really walk you through how to use the survey application. So you can always click on those for reminders. And we're also going to talk through that as well. And the fourth step is choosing or receiving a site assignment. And again, you don't necessarily have to have an assigned stewardship site. You can dub your favorite place a stewardship site as well and add it to the list. So this fourth step, we're going to be talking about in more detail in a moment. Our rare plant and insect experts, Mindy and Amanda, have created a site list, and we're going to go through that in detail. Step 5, you can plan your trip. We're going to talk more about this, but there's a link here to a map of the different potential stewardship sites that we already have listed. So you can kind of plan your trip by looking at those sites relative to the rest of the state. And finally, a reminder here on how to log your data. So making sure that you're going out at least 2 to 3 times to your same location between May and September, or possibly every month if you feel like really keeping tabs on that. So we're going to delve into some of those 6 points shortly, but I also wanted to take a moment in case you choose the route of recording pollinator sightings just opportunistically. So if you do click the Learn More button for that, you just see 3 simple steps. So again, learning the basics by watching the training video, and then how to download the application. And finally, a reminder to log those data on the application wherever you're just encountering monarchs and bumblebee. So recall that I just mentioned if you select the Learn More button under Become a Site Steward, it takes you through those 6 steps. And step number 4 has that link to view the list of sites. And just a reminder, you can add your own site to this list. If you have a spot that you think is looking good for monarchs or bumblebee, or just has milkweed and looks like quality habitat to you, you can go ahead then add that to this list. And we'll talk more about how to do that with the follow-up. We will be, I'm using air quotes that you can't see, assigning some people to sites based on preferences that you've already given us. So some of you filled out a survey when you signed up to be a part of this project, and you told us what county you live in and your preferences on bumblebee or monarch or both, and whether you're interested in an easy access site or moderate or strenuous. So based on that information, we will in the coming week do some tentative assignments for people, and some of these will also just be open for you to edit and add your name to. So we'll work through that. Just to orient you a little bit to this Excel sheet, the first column obviously is the name of the person that plans to visit the site. And then you also have a space here where you can add the dates. And this is just an approximation of when you would plan to revisit the site. This next column here includes the site name. And so this will be important later when you fill out your survey form for a stewardship site. It'd be great if you use the actual name on the list. That will help us cross-reference with those data that you gather. And then the next column here has the focus area or county. So you can tell at first glance where this site is relative to the rest of the state, and if it's close to you or if it's maybe a county you'd be interested in traveling to. And then that is followed by columns about the location of the site. So we have it in latitude and longitude as well as UTMs, so whichever you prefer to use. In addition, we have more information about the site characteristics, presence of milkweed. We also have a link here that you can click on for any of these sites, which will take you to a map and an aerial view of each location. So this allows you to get a quick bird's eye view of the area and whether it looks like the site is really easy to access just off a paved road, or if it might require some 2-track dirt road travel, and what the surrounding area generally looks like. So you can't actually see all the columns to the right on this screenshot, but when you actually access this site list, you'll be able to scroll further to the right and get a little more information about the habitat at the site. So whether you're looking at a wet meadow or mixed desert with stream habitat, that information is also further to the right, as well as the categorization of easy, moderate, or strenuous in terms of access. And there's a little more information as well about whether it's the site has an emphasis for monarch or bumblebee, and in some cases both. Let's move on here. So our rare plant experts have also, rare plant and insect experts have also provided a map that allows you to visit or select your stewardship site based on a bit more information. So you get to this map by clicking on the link in step 5 on the stewardship site page. So when you arrive to this map, you'll be able to click on this icon here that looks like a list, and you'll have a drop-down legend, which will show you what the yellow, green, and red stars indicate. So bumblebees are indicated in red, monarchs, I believe, are green, and bumblebee and monarch are yellow. So additionally, you can see the different colored polygons on this base map here. And that is helpful because I believe the land ownership polygons are in yellow for private land, which is useful to look for in advance of your site visits. So you can make sure not to accidentally trespass on private property on your way to a site. This shouldn't really be an issue because none of the general site areas that we would assign or the ones that are available for you to sign up for are on private property, but we just want to be aware of properties in the surrounding areas. I also wanted to take a moment to point out that these specific locations are just suggestions based on the presence of milkweed and in some cases the presence of monarch or bumblebee at some point in the kind of general vicinity. So you do not need to exhaust a bunch of energy on trying to get to the exact point location, but just use your best judgment when you arrive. So for example, if you pull off a 2-track road and you're relatively close to this point and you see a patch of milkweed on the opposite side of the road or just off of where this point is, and there's a wet meadow and it's looking like good habitat of continuous milkweed, definitely go to those even if they're off of the point that you're headed to. So you want to use your judgment. One more thing I wanted to point out on this map is you can zoom in and out, and if you are, say you're scoping out these 2 points that are right next to each other and you zoom way in so that they're the only ones in your field of view, you can then click on this arrow here and it will pull up the same data from the spreadsheet for those 2 points. So it allows you to do a little cross-referencing and making sure that the point that you see on the list is the same thing you're looking at in your map. So this allows you to just plan your visit if you already have a site that you're assigned or that you're wanting to sign up for. It allows you to plan ahead, see if there's any private property to be aware of, whether you're going to be on a paved road or if you might have some dirt road in your future. And it allows you to scope out sites you might be interested in based on location in advance. The other thing is if you want to just click on one of these individual points, you also get those same data, the site attributes from the spreadsheet. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit here to the description of downloading and entering observation data. But first, we need to talk about downloading the application. So you will be able to navigate to these directions, again, on those steps under both the stewardship site page as well as the opportunistic surveys page. But the first step is just to go ahead into your app store, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, and download the application. The icon looks like this little green icon. That's a notebook with a checked box. So hopefully some of you have already downloaded this in advance of the web training today, but we'll still talk through those steps. And then once you select that application, you're going to get a prompt to download, and you'll also be prompted to sign in, provide an email and a password. That is not necessary. So you do not need to have an ArcGIS account to access this survey. So you'll go ahead and download the application and then just close the application when it prompts you for password or email information. So once you close the application, you can then just open it back up. There's also, if it doesn't prompt you to do this, this is the link that you could put into the browser on your phone. And you'll just open that application back up. And once you do that, the Utah Pollinator Pursuit survey will show up in your, within the Survey 123 app. And it'll look just like this. And once that shows up, you go ahead and click on it, and that will reveal the option to collect data. So you can see, you can click on that blue icon on the bottom left-hand side. And the next thing that you're going to do is enter your name and your affiliation. So if your phone is updating properly, the date should be correct. You can add your name. If you're part of a state or federal agency or a nonprofit, it'd be nice to know that. But I think for most of us, it's going to be community or citizen scientist. That's a great affiliation to put in there. And then for this example, we're going to treat this as an opportunistic survey. So let's just say, for the sake of the example, I'm walking through my neighborhood and I notice a monarch flying around. So I'm going to call this an opportunistic monarchs entry. And then one more thing to check before you get started is that your location is accurate. So this will be running even if you were in airplane mode. The GPS on your phone should still be entering the location into this app. So just double check that that's functioning. You may, if you're in the backcountry, you may turn your phone to airplane mode to save battery. And again, these data will still be stored on your phone, and you can just submit those data once you are either back in service or put your phone out of airplane mode. Okay. So as you scroll down through the survey form, you'll then be asked a series of questions, and most of them are multiple choice, so fairly straightforward. If you've observed an adult butterfly, you would go ahead and check that. There's options for all the life stages. We'd also like you to indicate just broadly the number of monarchs that you observed. So in this case, we went ahead and selected less than 10. The next thing you'll be asked to do is upload a photo. And a tip that Mindy shares on her training video is, if these things are moving really quickly, sometimes the monarch are moving quickly. We just heard from Amanda that the bumblebee not so quickly, but it can still be tricky to get a really crisp image of these. And so one tip is you can actually just go ahead and take a video on your phone. save it, and take a screenshot of different points of the video when the insect was still. And then the way you would upload that is just by clicking on this folder here, and you can access the photos on your phone. Alternatively, you can just take a photo right there from the application. And if the first image you upload isn't actually what you're looking to save on the survey form, you can go ahead and delete it and upload another image. The next field on the survey form is going to ask you to select the habitat type, as well as any disturbances that you may have observed in that habitat. So here we have mowing selected, and if you notice some invasive species that you know, or if there's something that doesn't quite fit one of these categories, you can go ahead and just select other. And then if you keep scrolling through the survey, the next thing that is asked, if there are common flowers that you keep seeing in the general area, you can upload images of those. And you can upload up to 4. So just 1 is fine. Anywhere between 1 and 5 would be great. And then we can get an idea of what the common flowers might be in that area. And then a more landscape photo is great, just so we get an idea of what the general area looks like. And then finally, we'd like you to indicate the estimated amount of time that you were working on this survey. And this gives us a sense of, if this habitat looks like a giant wet meadow that could take hours and hours to survey, and you just took an hour, 30 minutes or whatever, that's great. And it lets us know that we can maybe spend a little more time out there. And then if there are any notes that you'd like us to know about the site, indicate those. And if you are in service, or if your airplane mode is disabled, you can go ahead and submit those data right there. If you're not in service, or you want to have your phone in airplane mode for a while, you can always just submit that when you get back to your vehicle or get back to a service area. So just for the sake of an example, for an opportunistic bumblebee sighting, we're going to go through this again. Some of it's the same, but if you do go ahead and select bumblebee instead of monarch, you'll then be asked to upload a bumblebee image. Same process as we went over with the monarchs. The same trick of a video may be helpful, and then taking screenshots. To me, the really interesting bit about this survey form, I love this. So we have a variety of bumblebee species here that are indicated by these different body segments and color patterns. And so it allows you to take your best stab at identifying the species of bombus that you might be observing. And if you don't feel comfortable taking a stab at that, you can always just select unknown or uncertain. The other thing we'd like you to observe is the behavior of the bee. So you can select foraging on a flower, or resting on vegetation, or whether it might be walking or digging in the soil. And then the next thing is, if you're observing the bumblebee on a bloom, please take a fairly up-close image of that flower. And then this next portion, as you scroll through the survey for bumblebee sighting, is the same, where you're just selecting habitat, description, and any type of disturbance you might be observing. And then finally, a similar option for the most common flowers in the area, 1 through 5, and then a broader image of the landscape. Don't forget to hit submit. So last but not least, I want to run through the survey form if you are monitoring a stewardship site. So first off, you will go through that same process, check the date is accurate, your name, affiliation, and then make sure if you are going to a site a stewardship site, that you select site instead of opportunistic. And again, this could be a site from our existing list, or it could be a site that you just decided you're going to make it a stewardship site and you're going to visit several times. The site name, if it's an existing stewardship site, should match the list, or you might just add your own name. It might be, you know, Charlie's favorite milkweed site. Next, you're going to indicate if this is going to be a stewardship site, whether it's your first visit or if this is a return visit. And on your first visit, we're going to be asking you to just do an assessment of milkweed presence in the area. So first visit, we want to know if milkweed is present. You'll see here, top of the list, the most likely species of milkweed that you're going to see is the showy milkweed. But we have the complete list here of the ones you're likely to see. You'll also be able to click on these images of the different species, and they'll be zoomed in for you, so you can try and make an assessment of which species you have. And then we'll also be able to check that by looking at the photo that you've uploaded. We'd also, this is out of the view, but if you scroll down, we also ask you to indicate the number of milkweed plants at your site. And again, that's going to be categorical, you know, less than 10, more than 100, that sort of thing. If you keep scrolling through the survey for the stewardship site, you have the option again to upload a photo for the most abundant flowering plant. And then we ask for a little deeper level of detail here. What color are those blooms? And then what is the floral characteristics? So we have some options here like a circular disc, sunflower-like flower versus tubular flowers, and so on. So you have some options to choose from there. And then if you do in fact observe a monarch at your stewardship site or any of the life stages, you're going to want to check those, as well as the relative number of those individuals that you might observe. And of course, upload a photo if possible. And then this bit of the survey form is the same that we have been seeing for the opportunistic surveys, where you select habitat type and disturbance details at your site, as well as uploading a landscape image and adding any notes, estimated time of work, all the same. And again, don't forget to actually submit those data once you are in service. So I just wanted to take a second to once again thank all of you. This work would not be possible. The landscape scale, statewide scale of this project just could not be done without the participation of dedicated community scientists like all of you tuning in today. So thank you, thank you. And with that, I will leave this screen up. You have our emails here, so you can get in touch with us if you have follow-up questions. And my hope is that the rest of the time we'll get to any questions that were submitted. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Mindy.
Okay, thanks. So the questions, there's been some great questions coming up, which is wonderful. One of the questions that that has been repeated is whether you guys will have access to that milkweed information, and the answer is yes. I'm wondering if this could be kind of dangerous to do on the fly, if I could share my screen and we could sort of zoom around in the website a little bit. So I don't know if you're okay with that, Mary, if you want to stop sharing and we can zoom around the website a little bit. So first thing, in terms of the milkweed, don't get too overwhelmed. I think what is on the survey 123 is the top 3 milkweeds that you're going to see, and that's showy milkweed, swamp milkweed, and antelope horn milkweed. The others you may encounter, but yeah, I think it would be best to just concentrate on those three. And I'm seeing if I can share, and I'm going to go back to some of these other questions. One of the questions I think that I will at this point hand off to Amanda is, if a bumblebee is approaching a flower but it goes away, didn't visit the flower, are we still selecting this as foraging behavior and take a picture of the plant that was approached?
So that is an excellent question. Whoa, there's some weird feedback here. Okay, so that is a good question. It would count as foraging behavior, but the most important thing that we get from an opportunistic bumblebee sighting is a visual of that bumblebee. So if you can get a photo of it, you know, as it's buzzing around, that's the best thing. If you can't get that photo, it's really not as helpful as because they can be easily mistaken. And we're also especially looking for the presence of western bumblebees across the state, as opposed to much more common ones like Bombus huntii, the Hunt's bumblebee, or Bombus centralis, the central bumblebee. The really common ones can be misleading. So we're looking for those rare guys, and a photo is the preferred way to report that sighting. So if you can't get it landed, that's probably best to just skip it and try to keep your eyes peeled for that bumblebee again, and try to be ready to take a photo of it. That's what I would say.
Okay, thanks. So are those who I can hear, Amanda, other panelists, can you see my screen, the website?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to identification tips milkweed here. And there are distinguishing characteristics. There's some photos. And this here, if you click here, there's a PowerPoint presentation on the milkweed that you should be able to download as a PDF if you wish to take that into the field with you. I'm going to go back here. Somebody else asked about how to get to that Excel spreadsheet. And this could be a little bit clunky here. Let's see, view your assignment. So under number 4, you view your assignment, and that takes you to that Excel spreadsheet. And if you go here, we're going to do it. This will take you to the map of the site and where it is in Utah, etc. So that's where you can find that information. The other thing I wanted to point out quickly while I'm here, find it on our map. So this is the map that Mary showed. And so you can zoom around in this. I'm going to, sorry, make you a little seasick here as I zoom in and out. You can click the layers. Oh, this is happening to me a lot lately. That's really strange. So you can click on and off the layers. So if you don't want to look at the land ownership, you don't have to. And you can also change your base map. So if you want to look at it with imagery or something, let's go to imagery hybrid. So you can look at it that way. And then the other thing that Mary was saying was this little arrow down here. We're going to zoom in on a site, couple sites. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sites. They're color coded by what you might be able to see. I think green is monarch, red is bumblebee, and yellow is potentially both. And then if you just click that there, you can see what's in that Excel sheet as well. And there's some details about each one of the sites as well. So that's, I guess maybe we'll keep that up. some of the other questions that I want to, oh, there's a few that have shown up after this. So I'm just trying to do this on the fly here. Let's see. The ideal frequency of site visits for stewardship. Ideal is every 2 to 3 weeks, but we are certainly okay if you can get out there monthly as well. Just to try to capture the life stages of the monarch if they are using it. That would be our ideal. How large does an area have to be before it's considered a separate plot? So for the milkweed plots, per the, I think it was Western Monarch or Milkweed and Monarch Mapper, they recommended that the milkweed patches be at least 50 meters apart or have some other barrier between them, like trees or you know, a river or something, before it's considered another site. When you are looking for the floral resources, and I will get Amanda's input on this as well, I would say if you're willing, you can capture any floral resources within a quarter mile of your site. Does that, if you guys are willing to walk around that much, does that sound reasonable, Amanda? Maybe we lost Amanda. Anybody?
Oh, I'm here. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Oh. Okay.
So I wanted to say absolutely.
Okay.
If you're willing to explore a little bit around the area and get your steps in, it is helpful to have a sense of the types of flowers that are around the area. They don't always have to be right next to the milkweed, and they could definitely be valuable nectar resources for the adults within a quarter mile. But you know, this is at your discretion and whatever you are willing to contribute, because we are grateful for anything that you can help with.
Okay, great. Here's one. Does milkweed have to be wild, or can we sow some in a stewardship site? So to me, I think any milkweed is fine, and we certainly encourage anybody to find their own patch of milkweed, whether it be you know, on public land, or if you have some access to some private lands, to certainly create your own stewardship site. And if you want to sow some milkweed, that's certainly, you can follow that as a stewardship site as well. Could be very interesting. I'm now looking on, somebody asked about the guidelines on milkweed sowing. So I think if my screen is still showing, there's cold stratifying milkweed here. So we have some resources on that type of information. Latest, it can be sown to be viable. That's a kind of a tough question to answer, how late you can sow it, because it kind of depends on what kind of year we're having. I really wouldn't go much beyond early May, really, because our precipitation really falls off after that. The other thing that you can do if you want to sow your own milkweed, if you know of a good showy milkweed patch, and wherever it is, and if it's okay to dig up some of that root, if you pull up some of that root, it has quite the root system, and if you pull like a 2-inch section out of the ground, you can put that right into where you want it as well, and it should do pretty well as well. I think, hang on, there's My phone camera is terrible. Can I take pictures with a regular camera and then upload pics to survey123? That is a good question. I am wondering if you can get those photos onto your phone somehow, then you can upload them from your phone. I would have to do a little bit more background on that. Does anybody, Amanda, Mary, or Sarah, have anything to add there?
I think the most complicated thing with that would be to have a correct longitudinal and latitudinal data associated with that. But if you can operate with Google Photos, your photo album, that might be something. That's how I move photos between my fancy Nikon camera and when I want to post something on Instagram through my phone. That's what I have to do. But the tricky thing is making sure that you're entering it for the correct lat long data point.
Right, yeah, make sure that it's going to the right site survey that you are putting it into. This is a good point. Thank you, Jim Spencer. Do not sow tropical milkweed. I think it's likely could be available in some nurseries, but it's a milkweed that does not go dormant, and it's so they find higher levels of disease when monarchs are feeding on tropical milkweed. So please do not use tropical milkweed if you want to sow. Use showy milkweed, antelope horn, or swamp milkweed, or any of the other Utah native milkweeds. Thanks, Jim. And Sue says, High Country Gardens has showy milkweed on sale right now. They also carry swamp milkweed, ships from their farm in Clinton. That's good to know. Sometimes swamp milkweed, if at all possible, just ask where their seed came from. Sometimes if it comes from the eastern United States, sometimes that it is not so good for our gene pool of swamp milkweed here. But I'm not gonna push that one too hard. Another question, this sounds like it's gonna be for Amanda. For bumblebees, do you want us to record data on how many individuals you see at one time? I saw the question for number of monarchs in butterfly stage, but didn't see the same question for bumblebees.
So I would say that oh, I hear so much feedback. I would say that we left that number out because for two reasons. Monarchs tend to be kind of restricted, especially if you're looking for breeding activity. They'd be restricted to where you'd find milkweed. So you definitely would expect them to be concentrated, if anything, in one location, and you definitely want to know how many monarchs would be in that area. For bumblebees, though, you could see multiple species in the same habitat because they are generalists, and so every individual bumblebee that you see, I would think it would be best if you entered a separate sighting for that individual. So that helps us because then on our end, on the data processing end, we can see if there are multiple bumblebee species utilizing the same habitat. Thank you for that question.
Okay, thanks. And then one more question. Should we enable location services on our phone's camera? Or is it enough to have the site's location data? I would think that it is enough to have the site's location data. That location that comes in with the Survey 123 data, I think, should be enough. And yeah, we will know that those floral resources or whatever else you might be taking a photo of is within that site. I think that's enough. Did anybody else have, Amanda, do you have any other strong feelings about that?
No, I mean not on whether or not, because that's a data usage sort of thing, and it's really up to you how you want to drive your own phone. I think that the location, the geo-referenced point is enough.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that answers the questions that I am seeing. Let me just, yeah, that does.
So I have a few points I'd like to add, if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we absolutely are very short, like I tried to emphasize at the beginning of my presentation. We are extremely short on monarch habitat usage in southern Utah. So those southern counties where there's more desert areas, it's very unpleasant probably in some of those summer months, but that's really when we don't know when monarchs are present. And we also think that if monarchs are present in milkweed habitat in like those canyon areas, those plateaus in southeastern Utah, those are very likely the supergeneration monarchs. That's where their breeding ground is. It's very likely. I mean, that's my hunch. That's based on data. We have a big gap, and we really need to try to fill that. So we are relying on the community science to help provide those sightings, because we are really blind in that information. And then I just wanted to say as an aside, I know Mindy wants to offer the same thing. If you have questions about what you're seeing, if you see a monarch, or you think it's a monarch, or any kind of butterfly, or a bumblebee, or you think it could be a bumblebee, maybe it's a different kind of species, and you want to email us pictures of these to help you distinguish what you're looking at, please do so. We are eager to help. We really want to help you help us. I know Mindy feels the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did answer one more question, and that was, is it okay to plant milkweed seeds if the plants they came from were potentially treated with pesticides, but the seeds were not? It's kind of a tough question, a good question. To me, it kind of depends on what kind of herbicide or pesticide was used. If it was a systematic herbicide or pesticide, it might have reached the seeds. It's hard to tell. And my answer to that is, one way to find out whether or not the herbicide or pesticide did enough to the milkweed to make it not grow, I think that will be the answer. I would say that would be your answer as to whether or not those seeds are okay. But surely worth a try.
Pesticides also, especially of those systemic ones, the lethality of any kind of insecticide that might be in, if it has made it into the seed tissue, it will not be lethal to an insect once it's much larger. So if it is not a teeny tiny little milkweed and it has a tiny first instar caterpillar, if it's a bigger plant, then it's the concentration should be negligible and there shouldn't be an issue there.
Thanks, Mindy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that answers all of the questions that I have here. I answered some live, and I will type those in if to have everything on record, and if people might need to take a look at these questions again.
We will also have the first part, the part that I did, the presentation that I did, and the presentation that Mary did. We will also have shorter recordings of those presentations, so that if you just wanted to revisit the background, or you just wanted to go back over how to select a site and how to navigate Survey 123, you can just revisit that part of the presentation. So keep an eye out for those recordings as well.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, so since I'm not seeing any more questions come in, I just want to thank everyone again for hanging in there with us in this new world of communication. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing your feedback, both on this presentation as well as I really look forward to seeing how people might become kind of amazed at how much a site changes and how many different flowers that you will see over the entire growing season. That's always fun for me, just to see how it changes and be kind of amazed at nature. With that, I'm gonna bid my adieu and pass it along to the other panelists here. We'll start with Amanda.
I want to echo Mindy's thanks. We're so grateful for your interest and for your willingness to help, and for what I hope is a shared passion for helping protect our pollinators. This is totally my jam. I love insects so much, and it's so cool to know that there's a community that helps support the protection and conservation of our very diverse native species here. So thank you so much. And again, this is a weird time, and it would be I feel like it would be fulfilling to be contributing to a good cause when we kind of feel powerless in a lot of other ways. So this for me is a golden opportunity to really seek my own purpose, and hopefully you can help by seeking yours. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Amanda. Mary, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you guys did a great wrap up. Big thank you to everybody. I'm so grateful for all the partners and the community scientists, and we will be in touch with those materials.
Okay, Sarah, anything from you?
No, thank you all again for coming, and yeah, we'll be reaching out to you soon, and don't hesitate to reach out to any of us with questions. We are here and ready to help. So thanks again.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you so much. Good night.